Hey, I'm Brock.
I'm Tay, and maybe a month or two ago, we posted a reel about like the things that we do just to keep our marriage thriving and healthy and happy, and it did really well. A lot of people were really curious about it. A lot of people said that it was helpful, and so we just wanted to elaborate on that a bit more, what it looks like and why we do it. I do want to preface, this is not advice. We are not telling anyone how to handle their relationship. This is what we do, and some people said it was helpful, some people said it gave great ideas, so we want to go more in depth, but we're not at all saying that this is the end all be all or that we're experts. We don't have kids, we know that. We also don't think that being married for only 6 months means that we don't have good ideas and don't do healthy things, and we're hoping to create these habits before life gets crazier. So that's how we look at it, and these are in no particular order. We think they're all equally important.
I don't know if we're going to call these rules or just things we do, but the first one is no absolutes, especially when we're arguing or fighting or disagreeing.
This is something that I think we started doing right when we started dating, would you say?
Yeah, I think did this come from the Dr. Sue Johnson book we read?
It might have. So when we first started dating, we were doing long distance. We were like 2,000 miles away from each other. And so one of the ways we connected was we would read books together and then like once a week meet or FaceTime,
yeah.
talk about them,
Have a little
whatever.
book club.
But they were personal development / relationship books. And one of those was
Hold Me Tight.
Hold Me Tight by Sue Johnson. And I think this is where we got this kind of rule for ourselves.
Yeah, and so by no absolutes, we mean saying things like you always, or you never, or I'm the one who always does this thing.
Yeah, there's very few things in life that are absolute. There's like gravity and, the sun rises. But for everything else, everything is everything. It's very gray. And so when we're fighting, we don't want to say you never and put this own belief into our head about our partner because it's probably not true. Mm-hmm. Another thing we do is we meet every Monday and we just kind of talk about like what our week looks like and if we need help with anything or if we have a busy day or whatever, just so we know what the other person, what's going on in their life and in their work life and stuff. And we know how to show up for each other. This started out as like a more official, it's actually started out as a bi-weekly relationship check-in.
Yeah, which we have an entire separate video on, which I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, and then it kind of evolved as our life evolved and as we started becoming more business partners instead of our businesses being separate and stuff. And so it's a less official meeting now, but it's still something that we do every week and then on a smaller scale every night before bed, just talking about the next day and what we can do for each other.
Mm-hmm. So like Tay said, it started out as more like relationship stuff, emotional stuff. Now we've, I think really like made that habitually part of just our day. And so this meeting is much more of like a business oriented meeting, and we'll talk about things like, hey, maybe I have a couple webinars this week that are at 5 p.m. and so I know I'm not going to be available for dinner, so it's important that I let Tay know that like I'm not going to be able to cook dinner, and B, then we can talk about like, would you like me to order, would you like to plan like going out to dinner, are you going to cook this week, and then we can kind of like pick up where each other might be, have less free time.
Yeah, so there's no like uncommunicated expectations, and our goal with all of this is that it doesn't have to be official, like I said in the beginning, that it just becomes habitual, and that's why it's evolved over time.
Yeah. Number 3 is no talking bad about the other person, especially on social media, where every time we do a Q&A, people, like the number one questions are always, what annoys you the most about Tay? What's Brock's worst habit? Like, I don't know why, we don't know why, but people always want to know the negatives that we have to say about each other, and that's an absolute rule that we've always had, is we're not going to talk about that sort of stuff on social media or really with anyone besides each other.
And I don't have negative things to say about you, even to you. There might be things where I'm like, hey, can you do this a little bit differently? But there's nothing I like can't stand about you or like, pay $1 million to change or whatever.
Yeah.
But if we are going through something, I might turn to like one person and talk about like my perspective, but I'm not turning to that person and just having like an hour-long sesh where I'm bashing you. And I think there's a difference between confiding in someone and maybe getting their advice or getting their emotional support and and just like, for lack of a better word, shitting on your spouse. And I personally feel icky when I see people make jokes about their partner just to make a good TikTok or something that they know will like get attention.
Yeah.
I think like you can make great TikToks with like there's so many other things to make content about or talk to other people about, and it just feels really gross to me, and so I don't do that.
Yeah.
Number 4 is we go to bed and we wake up at the same time, and this is something that it's important to both of us, but it was more your idea because my parents don't have that habit, so I didn't grow up with that.
Yeah, that was always something that like my parents did in our family, and I think there was times growing up where my parents didn't go to bed at the same time, and I correlated that with challenges that they were having, and so it's just always been important to me that we go to bed at generally the same time and wake up at generally the same time. Now, it might be that like I finish my chapter of my book and I go lights out and she is still reading for 5-10 more minutes. But we're getting into bed at the same time, we're doing our nighttime routine at the same time, and then when we wake up, I'm much more of a morning person. So like we'll wake up at the same time and then I might get out of bed and start taking care of the dogs and making coffee, but we're still on the same clock. It's not like, oh, I go to bed at 9 because I get sleepy and Tay's gonna stay up till midnight, you know, doing whatever else. Like I just feel like that creates kind of a separation.
And I think the biggest thing that this makes a difference on is how many daytime hours we have together. So instead of me waking up 2 hours later and then going to bed 2 hours later, those are 2 extra hours that we have to like spend together. And so there's more options for quality time. Now, if you don't go to bed at the same time or wake up at the same time as your partner, I by no means think that that's like a red flag or bad. I don't even think it's bad to like sleep in separate beds or anything. Just because my parents are super happy and have a great relationship, and so I don't see a problem with that. But Brock grew up differently, and so I understood that importance to him. I'm more of a night owl. I started going to bed like a little bit earlier and waking up a little bit earlier so we could have that. And I do really value those extra hours that we get together.
Number 5 is we go to bed angry if we have to. We don't have the rule of no going to bed angry.
This is from the Gottmans. They are the world-leading couples researchers. They both have PhDs in marriage and family therapy and psychology, and like, I don't know what their official PhD is. They have PhDs, they're married, and they put out some of like the best research on couples. And one of the things they found is that it's okay to go to bed angry, and it can actually be beneficial if you need to. And that asterisk there is that it's not like, oh, I'm angry at you and it's noon, I'm not going to talk to you until tomorrow. It's like, okay, we got in a fight, it's 10 o'clock, I still feel really heated, really elevated, and I'm tired now, so I'm grumpy, and now I'm stressed about going to bed late. Like, it's not gonna get resolved as quickly as you would need it to be resolved to like not disrupt your sleep schedule too much. Sometimes it's just better to go to sleep. Your system has time to like cool down. You wake up the next morning, and ideally you can talk about it in the morning, but you talk about it the next day and you resolve it then. It's not worth like trying to fight when you're sleepy and grumpy and now stressed about how you have to wake up early, and like it just adds more fuel to the fire. And I think that's worked out pretty well for us because almost every time we wake up and we're like, that was kind of silly.
Yeah, pretty much always. And this is something that I didn't used to know about or believe in. I used to have the belief of like, you have to settle things before bed. And so this has been a great thing to learn and incorporate into our relationship because it can be very, very helpful.
Yeah. Number 6 is if we can go together, we do. And this is just a spending time with each other kind of thing. And I think it's also helpful for like errand and chore type related tasks.
Yeah, so this kind of goes along with like wake up at the same time, go to bed at the same time, but if we are free, we'll go get coffee together, and we'll also, like Tay said, we'll do the errands together. So like we'll go to the post office together, we'll go check the mail together, we'll take the dogs out together if we can. Just to have those little moments. Quality time is one of my main love languages, and Tay is an introvert, and she needs her time and space to like recharge. But with that being said, even if we're like driving somewhere together and we're sitting in silence for 10 minutes, I still get the satisfaction of being with her, but she gets the satisfaction of not having to chit chat and also the satisfaction of being driven somewhere because I'm usually the one who's driving. But
It's nice to be a passenger princess.
we just spend a lot of time together, basically.
I think the other thing this does is like, okay, so with the exclusion of groceries, because I love grocery shopping and I like going by myself when I do that for some reason.
I'm not good at grocery shopping because I'm not good at looking for things.
The chore situation, it removes the even possibility of feeling like I do this a majority of the time. You know, going through the week and being like, God, like I feel like I've had to take the dogs out almost every single time. And now I feel a little resentful that you haven't offered to help or, you know, whatever. And so it just kind of removes that because we've done it all together. So there's no even possibility to argue of like who's done it more, who did it more recently or whatever.
And of course, you know, like we recognized at the beginning, this works for our lifestyle right now. I could see one day when we have kids that might not work. I could see as our times change and just our responsibilities change that might not work. But we're in a space where we work for ourselves and we work from home. So it's very easy for us to do most things together.
Yeah, we have that luxury. And there are some things on this list that for us are like non-negotiable no matter what our life circumstances are. And there are some things that it's like, this is what we do right now to get those extra minutes. And if our life changes, we'll find a different way to do that. Number 7 is one date night a week. And again, this is just quality time.
And this is something that we really, it's become a habit. Like it's not something that we even have to think about. We're guaranteed one a week with Sushi Saturday every Saturday. Like that's very special. We do eat dinner together every single night. It's rare. I can't think of a time where we're home together but eat dinner separate. Like that never happens. So we're always having dinner together, but then also we do at least like one other go out to dinner, go get lunch, maybe go on a coffee date, just something every week to have a special kind of like intimate connection time.
Yeah, and we say date night, but it's more of just like a little more out of routine.
Yeah.
So that might be like we went for our run together. Like yesterday he biked with me for some of my run and that was like special. You know, today we walked to coffee, just like these
intentional time together.
Yeah, more intentional and where we're actually talking and stuff, not like when we're going to the store and I'm just on my phone
Yeah.
and he's like, wow, I'm so happy to be with you. Like actual time together.
Yeah.
Recently we've been watching a lot of movies.
Yeah, which I like because I'm a movie guy and she's not, but she's been getting into movies and she's been getting into basketball. So who is she?
It's number 10, but since we just talked about it, I'm going to bring it up. It's taking an interest in each other's interests. This was not something that we ever explicitly talked about. It was just something that we did well. But again, it's from the Gottmans. They found that some of the happiest couples take an interest in the other person's interest. And that doesn't mean that if your husband plays hockey, like you have to go and start playing hockey. But it means that like when he gets home from his hockey game or whatever, you're like, is that not what it's called?
No, it is. I just pictured myself as a hockey player and getting home and
You know,
I'm taking
or
on my
like,
pads.
I think you might relate more to like golf because that's like more normal. Like he gets home from golf and you're like, how was it? Tell me about it. Who was there? What was it like? You know, like you're getting into it, even though you might really not like golf. You like that he likes golf. And that's what's important.
Yeah, and we have plenty of examples of this. We have things that we've now both grown to love together, like running, which is something that she is obviously done her whole life, and now I've fallen in love with running. Or snowboarding on my end, where I've snowboarded my whole life, and now I've got her involved. But there's also things that we don't necessarily both do together, but we take this interest. So like professional running, watching track on TV. I don't love watching track on TV, but I love that she does, and I love asking her about it and learning about it and hearing about times and things like that. Similarly, if I'm like playing video games on my like little Nintendo Switch, she won't really play those video games, but she'll ask me like, what's going on? What are you playing? What's, you know, ask me about the game. And so that kind of mutual interest just creates another opportunity for a bond in an area where I feel like a lot of other people's relationships, at least what you hear, is that like those things can be areas of like disconnect.
Yeah.
Or like, oh, he always plays video games.
I don't
She's
know what
always
he
doing
does
this.
when he's
Yeah.
gone for 5 hours playing golf, but like if you just really took an effort to truly be interested, not in the game of golf, but in why he loves golf. That's the difference, is not taking an interest in their interest, but taking an interest in them and what they see in that interest. Like, I love doing puzzles. He doesn't like puzzles. But when I'm doing my puzzle, he's like, oh, great job, babe. Like, how's it going? What's the most difficult part? Whatever, you know what I mean? And so it's a really awesome way to connect. And I think we just kind of learned that. Both of our parents are great examples of that. He already mentioned it, so I'm just gonna throw it back out there because it is on the list. We always eat dinner together. It's a nice way to wind down and connect again. If you haven't noticed, we really value like intentional time and connecting and talking and finding topics for us to talk about. I hear a lot of older couples that are like, we just have nothing to talk about. I think we try really hard to like find things to talk about.
A lot of these things are things that we've baked into our relationships since day one. Like when we first started dating, I know we mentioned it earlier, but we would FaceTime every single night, and we would FaceTime when we were doing long distance for 2 or 3 hours, and we were intentional about not obsessively texting each other all day of here's what I'm doing, here's I did this, and instead we would kind of like write down the things that were happening in our day and the stories and the different talking points and questions we thought of, so that when we FaceTimed at night, we could more intentionally like talk.
Like a better quality conversation about that, instead of like, I got an A on my test, and it's like, oh, great job.
Yeah.
And we're on the phone, like we can truly talk about it.
Yeah. And last but not least, couples therapy.
We are both huge advocates for therapy. He has gone to therapy quite a bit. I had gone to therapy quite a bit, both before we met. And then when we did meet, we were both super into personal development. I was going to therapy at the time. And then shortly, a few months into dating, I decided to go and get my master's in marriage and family therapy. So huge advocates for therapy. We've had great experiences. I think our asterisk with this one is preventative therapy. So obviously, if you have an issue that needs resolving, go to therapy, but also go to therapy before there's any issues, because therapy is so much more than fixing problems. It's also helping create good habits and coping skills and things like that, so that when something does arise, you already know how to deal with it, and it feels so much smaller than if you didn't have those coping mechanisms. So we did that for 10 months.
10 months consecutive, like once a week for 10 months.
Before we got married, and we developed some really awesome skills, communication skills, and we did that right before living in the trailer, which was part of the reason we did it. Is we're not going to be able to get away from each other. We're going to be in such a small space. Everything's going to feel more heightened and bigger. And we still use so much of what we learned from our therapist.
It's like the idea of, you don't go to the gym once you hurt your knee. Like you go to the gym to work out so that you're strong, so you don't hurt your knee. Or you go to the doctor, the dentist, every 6 months for a checkup. You don't wait until your teeth are rotting and black and falling out, and then you're like, well, I guess it's time to go to the dentist.
The dentist one is my favorite analogy.
Yeah, because everyone has this like routine of like, okay, you go to the dentist every 6 months. A lot of people don't apply that to mental health, and that's all that going to a therapist is. It doesn't mean that you're like broken and you need healing. It could be if that's where you're at, but it also could be, I'm gonna make my mental health stronger and my relationship stronger before we're in a crisis.
Yeah, and like we'll probably go back to therapy before another big life event, so that we're prepared for that event when it comes, rather than being like, okay, now I'm in a panic and I have to figure out how to like fix things. So again, I'm gonna say it again.
Before all the hate comments flood in.
Right.
You've been married for 6 months, you have no idea.
These are just things that we do that work for us. Some of these things are non-negotiable. Some of them will change over time, and that's okay. Take from it what you want to take from it and leave what doesn't work for you. We don't think that we know it all. We don't think that we know what works best for you or best for someone who lives in Canada or has a kid or whatever. This is just what works for us, and we're just hoping to like give ideas if you're looking to like work on your relationship a little bit or find like ways to have more intentional time or whatever that is. And yeah, we've only been married 6 months. I personally believe that we've put in a lot more work than some of the couples wandering around the streets. That's just me. So I think that we have a lot more knowledge just because of the work that we've put in than some people maybe our age, but I don't think we know it all. And that's why this list, like we said, is going to keep changing, because we're going to keep growing and evolving. So if you don't have anything nice to say, you don't have to say anything, because this isn't advice. This is just what works for us, and we're just hoping that maybe it just helps one person.
Yeah. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, leave a nice comment, not a mean one, and we'll see you next time.